Hello, everybody. My name is Terrance Evans. I am a partner at Duane Morris, and I'm also the chair of the litigation section of the California Lawyers Association. We're so extremely happy to have all of you to be here and part of this discussion. The purpose of today's program is twofold. First, we want to make folks aware about leadership opportunities with the California Lawyers Association, especially our litigation section. Tell you a little bit about what we have to offer and why it's such a great opportunity for diverse lawyers. And then we're going to shift gears and we're going to talk to some of the most outstanding diverse lawyers and leaders that we have in California. We have representatives from the API Bar Association, from the African American Bar Associations, the Latinx, Hispanic Bar Associations, and LGBTQ Bar Associations, to have a discussion about partnership and working together during these very important times. So I would like to introduce our next speaker, who I'm so excited is here with us today. It's the Vice Chair of the California Lawyers Association, Jessica Barclay-Strobel. Jessica has done such incredible work over the past many years on so many aspects of the litigation section. And for those of you who don't know, the California Lawyers Association is the largest state bar association in the United States with more than 100,000 members, and the litigation section is the largest section of the California Lawyers Association. And again, Jess has worked on so many aspects of what we do, from the Trial Lawyer Hall of Fame to Appellate Lawyer Hall of Fame to wonderful programs. And Jess, I'd like to give you the opportunity to talk about some of the great work you've done with the folks who are attending.
Great. Thank you, Terrance. So I'll cover some, but not all of the committees that we have, because we have other wonderful folks on here who serve on those committees who will speak to that. But to give you all a sense, we have some committees that address the typical facets of litigation, given that we are the litigation section. So we have an alternative dispute resolution committee, an appellate courts committee, and a federal courts committee. And so each of those, are able to address those parts of litigation that may be of interest to particular members. And then we also have several committees that are examples of how, as with our racial justice committee, the litigation section has responded to the needs of the moment. So for example, we have an access to justice committee that Erik chairs, and I trust he could speak to more about that. And a Veterans and Military Affairs Committee, which was created a lot like our Racial Justice Committee to respond to the need of the moment. It was created a few years ago, and in response to one of our judicial advisors, Justice Eileen Moore, highlighting a real need to develop awareness and understanding about military and veterans issues amongst lawyers, especially some of the challenges or things that lawyers who might have veterans as clients might need to know. And then there's a couple other committees that I'll especially highlight because they're ones where I think you could see where the value of understanding the importance of diversity is important. So we have a jury instructions committee, and that's one where, as you'll probably recall, or if you're involved with litigation section, we represent both defense and plaintiff side members. So our comments obviously are meant to encompass both views. And so we respond and provide feedback on the Judicial Council's revisions to the CACI civil jury instructions and verdict forms. So that's an example where certainly I think I've reviewed some of the proposed changes, for example, to discrimination jury instructions. And so, as you might imagine, that's where having an understanding about diversity can make a big difference. We also have several awards committees. We have a Trial Lawyer Hall of Fame award that we give annually. That's a committee I'm the chair of. And we were honored to bestow the award last year on renowned civil rights lawyer John Burris. And when I came on actually to be the chair, it was something where I felt it was important for us to look back and think about the extent to which the awards we were giving were looking at gender and also people of color representation. We also have an Appellate Lawyer Hall of Fame award, and I believe we will soon be having an ADR Hall of Fame award. That would be for the first year. And I can put a couple links in the chat because nominations for those awards are due soon. So if anyone knows excellent lawyers, trial lawyers, or appellate lawyers, this is your chance to nominate them. And before I toss it to the next speaker, I'll just note we also have some committees that are just fun, such as Legal London, which is a biannual trip to London to learn more and have a educational exchange about how the London legal system, excuse me, the British legal system works. And Mary attended one of those and perhaps could speak to those. But I'll put the links to the awards committees in the chat and then I think hand it off to Mary.
Well, thank you so much, Jess. And before Mary speaks, I just want to encourage all of the diverse lawyers out there and the leaders to nominate members of your community for the Trial Lawyer Hall of Fame. It's the most prestigious award given to trial lawyers in California, the same for the Appellate Lawyer Hall of Fame and ADR Hall of Fame. We want to make sure that these halls of fame are representative of the communities that we all serve. So please try to get those applications in. Next, I'm so honored to introduce the treasurer of the California Lawyers Association Litigation Section, my friend, who is an amazing trial lawyer in her own right and an incredible partner, Mary McKelvey. Mary, could you talk to us a little bit about some of our great programs and some of the amazing work you've done for CLA over the years?
Terrance, it would be a pleasure. And you didn't give me a time limit, so I'm going to put my own little time limit on here just to make sure I don't go over. Because we have so many fabulous programs. This is a great group and a great executive committee that we have. And I was looking through the programs and I'm thinking, which are the top ones that I should talk about? And it's tough, but I think I've narrowed it down to 4 that I want to talk about. One is called our Core Skills Program. The other is our Litigation and Appellate Summit, and it is not a lofty title. It is really a summit. We also have what we call a Pathways program, Pathways to the Bench, Pathways to political office, and then Terrance has introduced Pathways to becoming a lawyer. And then the 4th one, Jessica touched on it. It's such a fabulous program. It's called Legal London. And I'll start with that one and hit that one really fast. It's a program that CLA has done, and before that, of course, the State Bar, when the sections were under the auspices of the State Bar, we did the program called Legal London. We go once every 2 years, and now we didn't get to go last year, so I think it was 3 years ago, and it was literally the trip of a lifetime. We had the opportunity to have dinner in the House of Lords. We got to meet the equivalent and go into chambers of what would be like our Supreme Court justice, the equivalent in London. It is a result of a long-standing friendship and collaboration between the judiciary, the top judiciary in London, and the top judiciary here in California. And the experience we had, I got to be in the Old Bailey courthouse watching a real trial, and that's just been on a ton of movies, but we met people that will be friends for life just based on our experiences together. It's coming up in May. I actually should know the dates. I'm sorry, but I will post them in the chat and make sure everybody knows about them. It's coming up in 2022. And now that I'm thinking about it's March, but I can't remember the dates. If you are at all interested, and Terrance has promised he will go this year, please check it out. Talk to somebody who's gone. It's really just an amazing, amazing program. And on top of all that, you get a bunch of CLE, and what a great way to do it. So let me hit very quickly our Core Skills Program. What we do is we really look to provide educational programs on the core skills to lawyers who are new lawyers, really someone in their first 10 years. If you're a litigator, I consider that a new lawyer because you're learning. But the great thing is that those of us who have been around for a minute, in doing them, I find, as I'm sure others do, that we're always learning no matter how long we're practicing. So as we're putting the programs together, we're getting a lot of value out of it too. But we're certainly looking for collaboration on those programs. For people who want to participate, we want our members, we want our sister and brother bars to be doing that. So I better wrap it up. That was my 3 minutes timer. So we right now we're simultaneously doing deposition programs, pleadings and answers, and trial skills. So really fun programs to do, and really great programs to be watching and learning from. Secondly, we've got our Pathways programs, great programs. So you want to be a judge. We used to do that in partnership with California Women Lawyers. They have gone back to taking that themselves. So now CLA has their own program called Pathways. Pathways to the bench, Pathways to political office. And as I said, Terrance is doing Pathways to becoming a lawyer. So we're really looking, anybody who would like to be involved in those programs, please let us know. And then finally, we have our California Lawyers Association Litigation Section and Appellate Section Summit. It's a once a year, and we did it originally, it was over 3 days, and it was just some outstanding programming and outstanding speakers. Last year, our luncheon speaker was Justice Chin of the California Supreme Court. So we really get some amazing folks, and the programming is fabulous. This year, because it's a remote environment, of course, we'll be holding it on May 14th and the 21st. We'll be offering probably 10 hours of CLE credit. It'll be $125 for non-CLE litigation members, and it'll be $95 only for attendees from collaborating bar associations. We really would like you to collaborate with us on this. We would love that. If you are interested, please contact me. I'll put you in touch with Michelle Galloway. I can tell you that our keynote for this year is Luis Cespedes, and I hope I'm pronouncing his name right. I know I'm close. He's the California Secretary for Judicial Appointments, and he'll discuss very importantly and important to our section, the appointment of diverse judges, as well as a panel discussing elimination of bias led by our very own Terrance Evans. We're going to have a judicial roundtable on the return to courts post-pandemic, updates on the Supreme Court and federal and state rule changes, and then we'll have classes taught by master advocates, including sessions on writing major motions, conducting difficult depositions, and the art of persuasion. So it's really a great, high quality event, and we would love to be collaborating, and anybody who is interested, we'd love to get our membership involved in these too. Okay, I went a little bit over my 3-minute time limit, but I fit in a lot, I think. Thank you, Terrance.
No worries, Mary. You did an amazing job, and you covered so much information. I'd like to encourage all of the diverse lawyers out there, if you'd like the opportunity to really get your name out there on a statewide basis, participating in some of the training programs that we do that Mary just talked about is a great opportunity to do that. You'll be in front of an audience that is seen by judges and law schools and really statewide. So if there's a certain skill that you would like to teach, whether it's opening statements, closing statements, let us know. We can partner with you also on webinars, and you'll have the power of the state bar, the California Lawyers Association behind you, whether it's a webinar where you're teaching some particular skill or area of law. These are things that we can all help you with. Thank you again, Mary. We appreciate that. And now I'd love to introduce the secretary of the California Lawyers Association Litigation Section. And in addition to that, Erik Silber wears so many hats. He does so many things, from publications to access to justice. But Erik, I'll hand the floor to you, and if you can talk a little bit about the publications and some of the other great work you do for the litigation section.
Thank you, Terrance. It's an honor to speak to everyone today. And it's also an honor previously to be the vice chair of publications, actually, for the litigation section. We primarily or historically have had 4 publications. I think the kind of primary one, the one people think of most, is called California Litigation. It's a quarterly publication that has a variety of articles in it. It's kind of the most significant thing I think we've done with that publication recently was a special racial justice issue last year that came out. I think that was powerful, and there are the opportunities to do special issues like that. But aside from special issues, there's just if you think, hey, I'd like to write an article on a topic, or I'd like to help edit articles and get involved, there are opportunities to do both with California Litigation. Ben Schatz is the editor of that, and he's always looking for help editing, and he's looking for good articles. So if you have something in mind, you're free to reach out to him or to me, and I can put you in touch with him. I do a kind of, I'm a co-editor-in-chief of a companion publication called California Litigation Review, which I do with Wendy Huang, which is an annual publication. It's organized by topic. So we'll have, for an example, an employment law article, or we'll have a class action law article. Our publication based on last year comes out within the next month or so. But if you thinking about, you might want to, there's been developments in the law this year as it takes place, and you'd like to write an article for that, that's great. Again, if you'd like to be an editor, that's great. We could always use that. We have, for that publication this year, we have 3 Court of Appeals justices who are writing articles for us. We also do a profile of a California Supreme Court justice each year. So 3 years ago, we did Justice Groban. Last year, we did the Chief Justice, and this year we're doing Justice Corrigan. So there's an opportunity to kind of work on interesting things there. We also historically have had 2 publications which were separate but are now combined. We have a newsletter which keeps everyone up to date on what the litigation section is doing, and they always could use help editing things there. And then Justice Eileen Moore does a case update for us where she talks about kind of significant decisions. And again, we can always use editors for that. So there's a pretty good opportunity to get involved either in writing or editing our publications. As Terrance and Jessica mentioned, I also am co-chair of our Committee on Access to Justice and Civic Engagement. And I'll briefly just talk about that. We've been able to put on some really interesting programs. At the annual meeting, well, now 2 years ago, the last in-person one, we put on a presentation to 2 5th grade classes at an elementary school in Salinas who came to the bar convention, and we had Justice Judith McConnell talk to them about kind of how the court system works. And then we paired the students in small groups of 7 or 8 with an attorney and a judge, and had them work through a mock law that prohibited animals in school for health reasons, and then had them walk through kind of hypotheticals. What if someone brings a stuffed animal to school? Does that violate the law? Should it violate the law? And I think it was a great discussion. We had a presentation in January on impeachment, the 26th Amendment and the 14th Amendment with Loyola Law School professors, Lori Levinson and Jessica Levinson. So there's the opportunity if you think, oh, there's something I want to work on, some projects civically, or there's an access of justice issue that I want to work on. We're kind of a newer committee, so we'll help you turn your idea into an actual program. And so we're always looking for people to join our committee and to get involved. And that's all I have.
Thank you so much, Erik. Appreciate that and all the great work you do with our publications. And again, for those who don't know, the litigation section publications that Erik just talked about are the most widely circulated litigation publications in California. The special racial justice issue has received very positive feedback and was circulated to our 100,000 plus members. So if you're looking, again, to get your name out there, if there's an area of law that you'd like to write about and you want a very large audience to be able to see your work, including all of the judges in California, we're talking appellate judges, trial judges, California Supreme Court judges, one way to get your name out, to build your brand, is to publish an article with one of our publications. And we definitely want to include diverse lawyers in this amazing opportunity. Thank you again, Erik, for all the great work that you're doing. We're now going to shift away slightly from talking about the litigation section, and we're going to do leader California of the largest bar associations representing the Asian, Black, Hispanic, Latino, and LGBTQ community. And we're going to begin this discussion with speaking with Adrieannette Ciccone, who is, in addition to being a member of the executive committee of the litigation section, she is co-founder and co-chair of the CLA Racial Justice Committee. And Adrieannette, we'd like to hear about some of the great work that your committee has done. It was, of course, born in the litigation section, and we're proud of it. But the work you've done has been absolutely amazing, from legislation to publications to programs. So if you can share some of that incredible work with us. And by the way, Adrieannette, for 2 years in a row, has been honored by the Minority Bar Coalition and other organizations for her outstanding work in this area. Adrieannette.
Wow, Terrance, you are far too kind. Good evening, everyone. My name is Adrieannette Ciccone, and I have had the pleasure and privilege of being one of the co-founders and co-chairs of the Racial Justice Committee, in addition to being involved on the board of Charles Houston for a few years, beginning in, I believe it was 2016, until last year, Alameda County Bar Association, National Bar Association. I'm just a bar junkie. The Racial Justice Committee was actually born in the litigation section, and it was right after George Floyd was murdered, and litigation section members, all of which are on this call now, Mary, Jessica, Erik, Terrance, myself, wanted to do something in response to what I will call a murder of George Floyd. And so we embarked on a journey which eventually led us to being a wider California Lawyers Association committee. Also the criminal law section folks were doing some things, and so we joined forces. And so we've had several programs. The first program that we had featured Black attorneys, and they discussed the discrimination that they faced, the racial discrimination that they faced. Terrance actually provided a lot of context on him being held up in court en route to argue a motion. We had the illustrious Adante Pointer, who does a lot of civil rights work, speak on his own experience of being arrested just for being a Black man in a nice vehicle and for being placed at gunpoint by the police. And so we did a Know Your Rights program where Nichelle Holmes, in addition to District Attorney Terry Wiley and Public Defender Quizon Malouf, discussed what people's rights are, just so that our community meaning lawyers, family members of lawyers, friends of lawyers, et cetera, would know what to do if we are in fact stopped by the police. We also had a wonderful program where we looked at issues of intersectionality, and we looked at people who are part of the transgender community, who also are people of color, and the discrimination and issues, specific, unique challenges that they face. And the list of programs goes on and on. We did one on COVID and race, which we joined up with the La Raza Bar Association, which was really wonderful to discuss the numbers of who is being killed by COVID. And it is definitely, unfortunately, Black and brown people. The list of programs really goes on and on. We had a reparations program, and we have a lot of interesting programs to come, which Mary is working on a program that we have on white supremacy next month. And there's a lot of good things coming up. And I'm just going to give everyone a little bit of background. So we started off wanting to do something. And so we decided that we will create different buckets for people, if you will, who have different interests. So there's the programs, which is one part of it. There is the Racial Justice Journal, which came out that Terrance spoke of earlier. And we had a publication released the end of 2020 where people were able to write on various issues related to racial justice. And that was published, and that was really great. And we also have our policy advocacy group within a subgroup that Leaf Douch heads up. And so the work that Leaf has done has been really interesting, because we were able to help support the passing of AB 1506 regarding officer-involved shootings from Assemblyman Kevin McCarthy, AB 3070 regarding jury selection from the former Assemblywoman Dr. Shirley Weber, who is now the first African-American Secretary of State, and also AB 3121 on reparations, which Dr. Weber worked to push and has created a task force to study the issues of reparations and make policy recommendations for legislature. So we keep ourselves busy. We are always looking for more people to join us. What we are working on now is creating a group of people to work on our resource subcommittee, because we would like to have a toolkit that can be implemented at the local level. For example, if someone has an issue with a school board or even perhaps their job, what have you, we want to be able to have a resource that tells people what to do to increase diversity. And I think I'm probably over the time limit. If you gave me one, I don't know. But yes, that's what we do. And feel free to join us. We would love to have you.
Thank you so much, Adrieannette. And before we introduce Jen and Deanna, I just wanted to mention some upcoming programs that we have that are coming up. If folks are interested, we'd love to have you. This coming Thursday at 5:30 p.m., we are doing a program in partnership with multiple Affinity bar associations regarding Black military veterans. And that program will feature California Appellate Justice Eileen Moore and Black military veterans of different generations. We have the program that Adrieannette just mentioned that will be on April the 22nd from 5:30 p.m. until 7 p.m. with California Secretary of State Shirley Weber. We also have a program on April the 23rd where we've partnered with several API bar associations regarding uniting against hatred against the Asian Pacific Islander community. We have a program on the 28th of April regarding bias in the legal profession, the Black experience, that we partnered with the Alameda County Bar Association. That's from 5 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. And then finally, Mary mentioned this program on diversity and inclusion that will take place on May 21st, 2021 at the Litigation and Appellate Summit. And it will feature the past president of the Asian Pacific American Bar Association of Silicon Valley. So it's a perfect segue into our next introduction, which are the co-presidents of the Asian Pacific American Bar Association of Silicon Valley. We had the opportunity of doing a program with your organization last year featuring Will. It was one of the most powerful programs. People were crying. I almost cried during the program. It was so powerful and intense. And of course, over the past few weeks, we have seen this attention focused on racism and violence against the Asian Pacific Islander community. It's racism that has gone on for a long time, but the media is finally paying attention to it. And of course, we had the heartbreaking murder, and I'm calling it a hate crime. I know that there's some folks who are, going back and forth over what the federal definition is. But I think when you kill 8 people and you kill 6 Asian women in cold blood at Asian-owned businesses, I think it is a hate crime. So we're so grateful to have both of you here. We want to hear a bit about your organization, but we also want to talk about ways that we can partner with you in this fight against racism and hatred and attacks on the API community.
Yeah, thank you so much, Terrance. Hi, everyone. We are grateful to CLA for this opportunity to share some of our thoughts and experiences in addition to our programming. And we welcome the coalition building and coalition strengthening that you all are doing. And we look forward to partnering with you. Thank you for such a fantastic lineup of programs on such important topics. As Terrance mentioned, this has been a heartbreaking week for the Asian American Pacific Islander community. And it's really been, unfortunately ongoing for all of the pandemic. Stop AAPI Hate is a nonprofit organization that did release a report recently indicating that there are almost 4,000 reported incidents of anti-AAPI hate in the country. And those are simply the reported ones. There are numerous unreported accounts for sure. In fact, Jen, just told me last night that one of her friend's brothers was attacked in San Francisco just yesterday. And so, as Terrance mentioned, this has been an ongoing thing. It's been highlighted finally. I mean, it's unfortunate it took the horrific violence that occurred in Atlanta a week ago to bring it to greater light. But in addition, this is nothing new for the AAPI community, not even since March 2020. This goes far beyond that. I think it's an unfortunate reality that there have been policies, national policies, for hundreds of years, and those span all the way back to the Page Act of 1875, for example, that specifically excluded from immigration into the country Chinese women on the basis that all of them were morally questionable. And so, for Asian American and Pacific Islanders to hear the media coverage of what has transpired recently has been in itself traumatizing, because in our view, they very, very clearly are at play an intersectionality of various factors: misogyny, racism, class, gun violence, et cetera. And so, I want to thank Terrance for offering us a little bit of a platform today to share some of Jen and I, our thoughts on behalf of the AAPI community. I think there's two takeaways I'd like to say in general about this. One is the point I've alluded to already, which is that this is unfortunately nothing new. It's something that, unfortunately our kind of history textbooks don't really teach. I myself, as an American and as an Asian American, had to kind of educate myself on this. And so, I think there are some great resources. Please reach out to Jen or me. I know there's others. I saw there's at least one board member who's attending and listening today. There are resources. PBS just offered a live free stream, for example, of their Asian American history documentary series, which is very powerful and educational. So this is nothing new. I think, kind of learning the facts helps. And then the second is words matter. I think the Anti-Defamation League recently released a report, which if you haven't checked out, I highly recommend you do. It's powerful and tragic in summarizing the fact that in 2020, there was more hate propaganda in the nation across and against all groups, LGBTQ+, Black, African American, Latinx, AAPI, in the history of this country. And words matter. And so things that seemed seemingly sort of minor, such as calling coronavirus, for example, the China virus, in the AAPI community's view, have contributed to the increase in anti-AAPI hate. And so, my simple ask is, we can all work together. This is not a burden or a problem that any of us on this particular call created, but it is within our power collectively to help combat, the hate that is unfortunately percolating in the country. And so, we just ask that you stand up and speak out against even sort of minor situations of microaggressions or unconscious bias where you can. And second, we invite you to reach out to us and to partner with us, as we have done in the past, as Terrance mentioned, with Will, our former APABA Silicon Valley president, on one of our most powerful programs from last year in partnership with you guys. We just invite you to work with us, because I think the more coalition building, coalition strengthening we can do, this will help, I think, hopefully advance diversity, equity, and inclusion, because it's all a continuation. Everything that's been happening last year, last summer, they're all related. So I'll turn it over now to Jen.
Yeah, thanks so much, Deanna, and thanks so much, Terrance, for having us. We also wanted to thank all of you, all these minority bars and community members who have reached out to our bar with heartfelt words of support and commitment to action. Like you, Terrance, we really appreciate it. And just to give a little more background about APABA Silicon Valley, we were formed in 1985. We have 600 plus members, 16 different committees, both substantive law, but also committees like pro bono and diversity and inclusion. And we just wanted to share a little bit about recent events we've had and upcoming events. So last week, Deanna had this fabulous idea of having us do an informal Zoom hour, just a meetup for any members who wanted to chat about the surge in anti-API violence. And we had this great small group discussion that I think was really comforting to everyone on the call. And we really want to do more of these informal meetups that have no set agenda and just provide a safe place to talk. We also wanted to get the word out about this Friday, March 26th, which has been designated as a virtual National Day of Action and Healing by a large coalition of APA organizations across the US. I'm going to stick the link in the chat here for AsianAmericanDayOfAction.com. But if you go to that website, there's a really great toolkit on how to participate, including a bunch of sample social media posts, various action items such as, community organizations that you can donate to, how to build your skills as an ally, attending bystander intervention training, and then also resources for educating ourselves and others on the recent attacks and their roots in white supremacy. Some other events we have in the pipe, we're going to have an event with a psychologist on understanding racial trauma. I think, Terrance, you mentioned this April 23rd event with Alameda County Bar Association on anti-API violence and heightened xenophobia and racism. And there'll be elimination of bias on CLA credit available, and several bar associations are co-sponsoring that, including ours. And then lastly, our D&I committee is having an event on April 21st on how to create successful employee resource groups or affinity groups within companies. And ERGs are really a great tool for employers to provide additional support to its employees, which is really helpful in times like these. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jen and Deanna. And I just want you to know that the California Lawyers Association and, of course, the litigation section are with you and your members. We'll work with you to get the word out on these events. So I'll do my best to get the links from you so that we can share it with our membership. And we are committed to doing a program with you before the end of the year that focus specifically on the racist attacks against the API community. You have all of us here as your support. So thank you for being here, and we'll have some more discussion as we go through the program. Next, I'd like to introduce Nichelle Holmes. Nichelle is the president of the Charles Houston Bar Association. I've had the honor of working on so many programs with Nichelle over the years, and even just a few weeks ago. And I think Nichelle can really speak to a lot of what the API community is going through, because we've dealt with it in the Black community. And maybe, Nichelle, you can talk about some of the great programs that you've worked on and things that are coming up.
Thank you, Terrance. I just want to say to Jen and Deanna, Charles Houston would love to partner with you on something really soon, even if it were just a conversation. I'm really big about conversations and sharing stories, and I feel like when we talk and we start to understand each other's culture, like, it really has a huge impact. So also, if you could send a link, we have an affiliates newsletter that we send out every week. We'd be more than happy and honored to share your events in our newsletter. And I just want to say, so last year was really tough for the African American community for a variety of reasons, right? So when anything happens, Black people are always disproportionately affected. So we had COVID, we had Ahmaud Arbery, we had Breonna Taylor, we had George Floyd. There were several others that happened during the year, and these are just the ones that were on the news. They always happen, though. We always hear them. Our family, our friends, we hear them all the time. So while it was heartbreaking for us, it wasn't surprising to us because we hear about it all the time. So many of us who are lawyers experience these types of situations all the time. So we were, the very first thing that we did was we had a conversation. We had a Zoom call where we invited our memberships and our allies to just kind of talk, a space to kind of just vent, because it is such an emotional thing. We also thought it was really important to address the mental health aspect of it, with just seeing that on the news over and over and over has a tremendous impact that we kind of don't think about sometimes. And so we did a mental health series where we talked about, we split it up in 3, where only men were allowed on the Zoom. We did it where only women were allowed, and then we came together and did it as a whole community. And we want to do a follow-up on that this year. We also got behind some legislation, both in name, sponsorship, also and financially, One was the Racial Justice Act, which allows for post-conviction relief when there has been animus or discrimination or bias in the trial process. We also backed Prop 16, AB 3070. We also created, initially one of the first things we did was create a racial justice task force. And so that is where the litigation committee was formed. And through the Racial Justice Task Force, we partnered with everybody on all types of programs, Know Your Rights programs, where do we go from here? We partnered with CLA and the Racial Justice Committee. We connected with the Alameda County Bar Association and their Racial Justice series. We've done a number of events and webinars, probably about 100 from last year until today. And a lot of it is just around education and conversation. And I think the most powerful conversations are those when we're sharing our experiences. And I know some of the programs that I've been on with Terrance, and when we hear his story and his, it brings it closer to home and we can understand it a little better. We also are really big on the pipeline. So one of our things we wanted to do in the midst of the pandemic was continue to be able to award scholarships for our law students. And so we were very successful in that. We gave away almost $30,000 in scholarships at our gala in December. We did a huge virtual gala where we sent out masks and wine glasses, and it was very fun. And so for us, that was a big thing for us to be able to award 9 law students, because many of them are the first in their families to go to law school, and the pandemic hit them especially hard. They weren't able to get internships. So to be able to provide them scholarships to help them in their law school journey. We also, we have an Arc of Justice Fellow that we fund every year in collaboration with Public Advocates. We do another fellowship with Change Lawyers, but Public Advocates, we do an Arc of Justice Fellow, and we're able to increase that from 1 student to 3 students. So they have an opportunity to work in the summer for a public interest, and they get paid for it, which we know that is not always the case sometimes. So it gives them that opportunity. And then we funded 2 post-bar or 3L bar scholars through Change Lawyers. So that was really big for us. And so those are just some of the things that we've done in the last year. We would love to partner with any affinity bar, or especially on the issue of Asian hate, or stopping that. I too was having a conversation with, this is not new. This has been an issue for a really long time. It's not a new thing. And so I'm glad that we're on here together, and I would welcome an opportunity to partner, and hopefully we can do that sooner rather than later.
Thank you so much, Michelle. And also, I just wanted to highlight what Michelle, Jen, and Deanna said, and that's the mental health impact that these tragedies have. When we see these stories on the news, you start to relive your own personal trauma, and even the stories about the API community, and just seeing these videos over and over again, it just made me think about all of the attacks on the African-American community. And I grieve right along with the members of the API community. So we're all in this together. Thank you again, Michelle. I wanted to introduce April Smith, who is a board member with the East Bay La Raza Lawyers Association. April is also a district attorney and a friend of mine, and I've seen her speak. She's spoken with some of the programs that we have done in the past. Can you tell us a little bit, April, about what your organization has been doing and what you have coming up?
Yes, thank you. First, I really appreciate that this was put together, and that East Bay La Raza Lawyers Association was invited to this incredible panel. Second, I want to extend, similar to what Michelle started with Jen and Deanna, East Bay La Raza Lawyers Association would love to partner with you on anything future event. We just released our statement denouncing the hate crimes that have been taking place and making sure that our membership, as well as anyone that comes to our site, understands that we're in solidarity and that we're fighting alongside with you. Similar to what Nichelle was speaking about, from the Latinx community, we've also very much understand the attacks that have been taking place. Last year, I spoke on a panel where I believe I met Terrance, describing what kind of impact the Latinx community has during COVID. We're disproportionately impacted. And then also talking about the intersectionality between the Latinx and the Afro-Latinx community, and how the Afro-Latinx community has been impacted with all of the racial injustice that was taking place last year that's already been kind of discussed. I think it's incredibly powerful for all of the affinity bars to come together and collaborate and continue communication in this regard. East Bay La Raza Lawyers Association has been making many efforts to try to do as many collaborations as possible. We actually have some upcoming collaborations that I want to make sure I mention. On April 15th, we're collaborating with the Alameda County Bar Association with the Racial Justice Task Force presenting Allyship Program Part 2. Monday, April 19th, we're collaborating with the Minority Bar Coalition President's Reception, Stronger Together, a conversation on hate, hope, and the role of the minority bar. April 23rd, we're collaborating with the Alameda County Bar Association on Racial Justice Task Force, presenting the Anti-API Violence Program. And we also do partnership with Centro Legal Youth Law Center. One of the missions for us as well, as many of you most likely know, California is made up of 40% Latinx community, yet the numbers of who is actually admitted into the California State Bar and who sits on the bench do not represent or reflect the percentage of our people that are here in California. So that being said, we definitely use a lot of our effort in East Bay La Raza to make sure that we're supporting our Latinx youth that are preparing to go to law school. We do an annual gala where we're able to give scholarships to these young people. We do a lot of mentorship to make sure that they know that we're there and they have some representation that they can see and rely upon for future help and mentorship. And just to give an example, last week we did a program called Mujeres in the Law. This was a program that we collaborated with two judges, Judges Lupe Garcia and Judge Castellano. Several other members from different organizations were also present. And we talked about the fact that in Alameda County, currently there are only 3 Latina judges on the bench in all of Alameda County. So we're really wanting to make sure we're highlighting the necessity for representation in both advocacy as well as on the bench. And, you know, again, I just want to say it really brings a lot of joy to participate in this, because with so much darkness and quite frankly, just devastation we've seen across all our communities in the past year and, you know, historically, but particularly in 2020, there has to be some sense of hope and optimism. And I think this collaboration is where we experience any sense of hope and optimism. So I definitely invite everyone at any point where we can collaborate with you as East Bay La Raza Lawyers Association. We stand in solidarity with all our affinity bars, and I will definitely make sure to put our website in the chat. Please feel free to check it out and you'll see any upcoming events. We have some things coming this summer, but we haven't officially put our dates on it yet. So it'll hit our website soon. Thank you.
I feel like we should just pick a date right now, or we could just all come together and do a program.
I like that.
Let's do it.
It would be the biggest program ever, for sure. Well, thank you so much, April. I appreciate it. And we will come back. Everybody speaks and something that we do together to show our support. But I next would like to introduce my friend and fellow executive committee member, Jeff Kosbie. Jeff is also the co-chair of Bay Area Lawyers of Individual Freedom, which is the oldest and largest LGBTQ bar association in the United States. And I've had the honor of working with Jeff on a number of diversity programs. He's done such incredible work. Jeff, can you talk a little bit about Bailiff and the great work that you've been doing?
Yeah, thank you for that introduction, Terrance. And I also want to echo everyone else on here and say we would love to do joint programs with the other minority bar associations. And I know we actually have a joint scholarship with IPABA Silicon Valley every year, and we have a joint scholarship with the Filipino Bar Association as well. So Bailiff was founded in 1980 actually, but the last couple of years we've really done a lot of work on promoting diversity and inclusion, both within the LGBTQ legal community and within the broader legal community. And that's included, you know, what I consider little but important things like issuing a statement against the rise in AAPI hate crime and in support of Black Lives Matter. And also doing programming. We have upcoming a session with Alameda County Bar Association on the intersection of LGBTQ plus identity and race on April 26th. And in the past year, we've done just a huge number of programs. We've done trainings on representing trans prisoners during COVID. I think we've done a couple of those. We've done trainings on representing Black Lives Matter protesters. We've done CLEs on representing LGBTQ plus employees in employment discrimination cases. We just did the basics of LGBTQ plus asylum law, a training on that. We've also tried to create safe spaces for our members to have space to talk. We've done some happy hours for that. And I think back in summer of last year, we had a town hall on discrimination and allyship and trying to get our members to think about how they could be allies and kind of share their stories on that. So one of our most meaningful events, I think last year, was a lavender graduation. And I actually heard from some law students that that was their only graduation ceremony because their law schools canceled their graduation ceremonies entirely because of the pandemic. And we had several speakers, several LGBTQ plus judges who spoke at that. So that was, I think, very meaningful. And we're working on organizing that again. And we've also, I think, this last year been very intentional about trying to expand diversity on our board and in our committees. Several of our events have been co-sponsored with different organizations, and I don't remember off the top of my head what was co-sponsored with who. But we're definitely always interested in co-sponsoring events as well. And I think it's very important both to our success and to the broader legal community's success. I guess there are also things I've mentioned that are not as visible. And I think these are, again, places where we could partner. We wrote a letter to the California State Bar regarding their diversity, their annual diversity survey, regarding their questions about how they ask about gender identity and suggesting ways that they could better ask about gender identity to better encompass the ranges of that. And so I think things like that are things that, and I'm sure other bar associations on this call do activities like that that aren't as visible sometimes, but I think are other places that we could potentially partner where we have overlapping interests sometimes. and could share our resources in activities like that.
Thank you so much, Jeff. I appreciate all the great work that you've done and that you continue to do. And it's important to point out that your organization really cuts across all racial lines, all gender lines, all lines whatsoever. And so we appreciate all the great things that you're doing. I'm very honored to introduce our next speaker, a good friend of mine, Tamara Benefield. We actually went to law school together. And I'll just tell a funny story before I introduce Tamara. So she was on the moot court. She was on the moot court team, and I had no plans to be part of moot court. And she came and told me that she had signed both of us up, and I was her partner. And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And so we went on, and we came in third at the Frederick Douglass moot court competition as the third best advocates in the competition, and it's all thanks to Tamara getting me to be her partner. So I appreciate that. Since then, Tamara's gone on to bigger and better things. She has an incredible practice in Beverly Hills, but she is the director of Region 9 of the National Bar Association, and she's representing the NBA here today. Tamara, can you share some of the amazing work that you've done and continue to do on behalf of the National Bar Association?
Absolutely, Terrance. And I am going to have to just follow up with your story that I think you and I have spent the rest of our careers not living down being in third place rather than number one. We were actually unhappy about it at that point in time. My name is Tamara Benefield Falk, and I am a 18th year family law attorney, a certified family law practitioner, a specialist, and as Terrance mentioned, my practice is in Beverly Hills. As part of my civic engagement, I serve as Region 9 Director of the National Bar Association. The National Bar Association is the largest and oldest African-American bar association, and we even have international members. We, like many of your bar associations, emerged primarily historically because we needed to find a space within which to enrich, empower, inform, and become socially active in becoming change makers, social engineers, civil rights leaders, and the like, in transforming our society into one in which we had a seat at the table, particularly when some of the more mainstream bar associations at the time and historically were not allowing Black attorneys to become admitted to the bar associations. And so before I get into my comments, what I would say is the National Bar Association, I would encourage you to go to the website and consider not only joining, but also participating in the Gertrude Rush conference that is coming up, and also the annual National Bar Convention, which has a number of CLEs. We're organized not only by region, I represent the Western region, but we're also organized by practice areas. So as we explore this idea of, coalition building, allyship, understanding one another, I think it's so important that we feel permission from each other to join into those intimate spaces where we get to know each other, socialize, become professional colleagues, understand and learn each other's history. The National Bar Association, aside from its historical significance, has done a tremendous job under President C.K. Hoffler on a nationwide and international scale of dealing with the three major issues of our time, and that being the pandemic, COVID-19, voter suppression, and the national and really global reckoning on racial justice. Regarding the pandemic, National Bar Association has done an amazing job of educating its leaders, giving them the information to understand the more fine nuances of the vaccines, the disproportionate impact on our communities, and educating us so that we can go back in and educate others. I attended a wonderful a webinar by the American Medical Association in partner with the NBA. And that's just one example of where the NBA has really tackled COVID-19, particularly its devastating impact in our community. In the Black community, we are 3 times as more likely than our counterparts to pass away from COVID-19. And so educating, disseminating masks, continually reaching out into the community to make sure that some of the historical barriers to getting a vaccine, such as the Tuskegee experiment, et cetera, don't continue to pose barriers in the future. Regarding voter suppression, the historic victory of Kamala Harris and the activism, the political and community-based organizational powerhouse that's been building in Georgia has been just one of the ways in which the NBA has created synergy and worked constructively to protect the right to vote in the Black community. Our president has allied and partnered, been integral with the Rainbow Push Coalition and other historic civil rights organizations in making sure our lawyers were able to get mobilized and activated into our communities just when it mattered most. So we saw phone banks being assembled. We saw registrations for lawyers to volunteer. We saw voting rights observers, you name it. The National Bar Association has done it, as we have for decades, because we had to do it as part of American history, and not only Black history, but American history. Many of the voting rights acts that we are so reliant upon, or the civil rights acts, emerged very much based upon the work of African-American attorneys and our contribution to the legal community. So as another point, as we explore ways in which we can be supportive of each other, is to learn our legal histories, learn the history of African-American lawyers associations in America. One of the most outstanding events I attended as a partnership between Region 9 and Charles Houston Bar, CLA, was on the history of Black judges and lawyers. And I think if you take the time to consider membership and attending our conferences, you'll see the rich oratorical tradition that you see exemplified in Martin Luther King and many of our more notable civil rights issues, because we have institutions built around that. Right now, I am coordinating a Martin Luther King oratorical competition, and that's just one of the ways in which we continue to build and give back directly into our community and some of our younger aspiring attorneys to enrich them in the art of debate, in the art of presentation, which is something that we are very proud of. Regarding, voter suppression, COVID-19, racial reckoning, as you know, the past 4 years has been painful to many groups and many communities for very similar reasons. And I think it's important at this point in time that we just kind of deal with power, politics, and law straight on. I mean, the past 4 years literally normalized racist rhetoric, normalized marginalization of vulnerable groups. And we have to understand that is not only anti-Black, anti-Asian, anti-LGBTQ, when transgendered members were not allowed to be visible in the military communities. We have to understand all of that as anti-democratic. And we saw a very, not a slow, a very rapid buildup from Charlottesville, George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery. I mean, when you give permission to people to use racist rhetoric, and it comes from the highest reigns of power in our nation, it is an assault on one of us, and we have to understand that it's an assault on us all. We have to stop being reactionary and to start being proactive. When we saw Charlottesville and we saw, you know, the tiki sticks and them saying, you know, we will not let Jews replace us. You know, Jews and African American people have a very historic, powerful relationship of marching together, of coordinating on civil rights. And we have to remember our legal and social political histories and how we have partnered historically to tackle white supremacy and the misuse and abuse of power as it gets wielded against vulnerable communities, as it has been most recently against Ahmaud Arbery, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor. I'm proud to just inform you that the National Bar Association has cultivated and nurtured the leadership and the national prominence of some of the most powerful civil rights lawyers that you're seeing every day on your news screen. Benjamin Crump, Lanita Baker, who's handling Breonna Taylor, and Charles Houston Barr did a wonderful job as one of our affiliates and giving you an insight, a legal perspective into the anatomy of that case. And so I just wanted to take a moment in terms of where we go from here to say that now that it has all been unleashed in terms of the fury of white power and the practice of marginalization of vulnerable groups. And now that it even culminated into a direct and facial attack against our democracy, I think now is the time for all of us as lawyers, regardless of your immutable characteristic, to say that, you know, these values of diversity, inclusion, racial justice, they need to be owned wholly and compassionately by us all, because we're the ones who are protecting our democracy. And we need to see white supremacist hate, not only on the local and national level, but just as a facial and one of the most threatening issues with regard to our democratic institutions and our ability to move forward as a nation. And I think when we take that kind of perspective, it makes it very easy to join one another, to empathize with each other's pain, and be a lot more proactive with respect to how gun violence affects our communities, how women are treated in the workplace, how there's a lack of diversity on the bench. And you saw a historic stacking of white judges under the Trump administration, making it very hard to have representation on the federal bench by people, Black, Indigenous, and people of color, or BIPOC, as the phraseology is now. And so thank you for allowing me to be part of this this group. It's so great to meet you, because I think as we can see each other, acknowledge each other, build this kind of coalition, I think we'll be a lot stronger as lawyers as we take our rightful place in protecting our society and our democracy.
Tamara, thank you for those powerful words. And before we get to our final thoughts, I just want to remind folks, and this is being recorded and it's going to be made available to all of the Affinity Bar Associations, and it's going to be on the CLA website. I just want to remind folks that the deadline for applying to being on one of the powerful CLA executive committees is April the 1st. So we want to make sure that we have diverse lawyers applying to be part of these executive committees. These committees have influence over policy, over procedural rules, over legislation. They provide advice to the governor's office, the California legislature, numerous organizations throughout California government. And I'm just going to briefly name what these other sections are. Now, of course, we want you to apply to the litigation section first, because we're the biggest and the best. But I don't want to leave out the other sections, because in reality, we only have so many seats on the litigation section, and there's 17 sections. So very quickly, antitrust and unfair competition law, business law section, the criminal law section, the environmental law section, the family law section, the intellectual property law section, the international law and immigration section, the Labor and Employment section, the Law Practice Management and Technology section, Privacy Law section, Public Law section, Real Property Law section, Solo and Small Firm section, Taxation section, Trust and Estates, and Workers' Compensation Law. So again, the deadline to apply to these different sections, which are so extremely powerful and influential in California, is April the 1st. So we encourage all diverse lawyers to submit applications to be a part of the section that most connects with your practice. So here we're approaching the end of our discussion, but I want to give all of you the opportunity to just give some final thoughts on how you would like to see statewide organizations such as CLA partner with you and provide support for your membership. And I'm going to go back to our good friends, Deanna and Jen. Are there certain ways, and I want to mention quickly, John Boxberger, our section coordinator, just made me aware that we just received a proposal request from 2 APABA members. I'm not sure if they're APABA Silicon Valley, but they just submitted a request to the litigation section saying they wanted to partner with us on an anti-hate webinar. So we certainly are going to support that, but we would like to do something bigger. Can you both talk about ways that we could be supportive as a statewide organization of you and your final thoughts?
Yeah, thanks so much, Terrance. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, Terrance, actually, that came from the international section from CLA, and they work closely with the Japanese Bar Association. And so they put this webinar together. We're firming up the date right now, and we'll be putting that out to everyone real soon.
Thank you so much, John. Deanna and Jen.
Yeah, thanks so much, Terrance. I just think, what you guys have done today, which is pull together so many strong, powerful, inspiring leaders of various organizations through the state, is something that we would love to continue with. I think if CLA can continue to bring us all together, it can only lead to additional coalition strengthening. I heard so much that each of you all said that resonates deeply with what Jen and I feel and what we hope for in going forward in coordinating on programming. And I think it's only through that solidarity through which we can accelerate the change.
Thank you. And Jen?
Yeah, absolutely. I echo Deanna's sentiments. It's been so helpful just to meet all the other panelists today. We're already making plans to try to chat offline after this to collaborate on different panels. So this has been just really fantastic. Thank you so much, Terrance.
No problem.
Yeah,
Thank
and just sorry, one more thing. I just want to thank everyone for the statements of solidarity and the words of solidarity. They, like I said, words matter, and for you guys to just say that you stand with us means a lot. It's been an emotional week for us, and so we're grateful for that.
Thank you so much. Nichelle, any final thoughts about what you would like to see and how we can work together?
I'm just kind of envisioning us having T-shirts and masks, and maybe we do can we social distance on the steps of the Capitol, or can we do like a march or something? Anyway, I'm just thankful that we're here, and as we're already starting to make plans offline. I think it would be great. One thing that kind of sticks out in my mind is if CLA would, try and look to Charles Houston for some of their teachings. We have some amazing lawyers who are very skilled, great orators and great litigators who could definitely share in teaching lawyers across the state. So I would love that, to collaborate in that way, and to also try and get some of our members onto the sections. I know at one time Terry was very big in the crim law section. Maybe we can do, a webinar or something like that to just kind of educate our members on some of those opportunities, what they look like, how to apply, when the applications are due, when would you start, what the commitment is like, and some of those things. So Yeah.
No, thank you, Michelle, and that's a good point. We would like to have diverse lawyers teaching our seminars that get distributed to our 100,000 members, writing for our publications. And if you have members who don't want to apply to the executive committee, we do have subcommittees that could be a good fit. So that's a really good point, and we want to do that, Michelle. April, can you share some of your final thoughts with us?
Well, kind of echoing what I've already heard, just bringing all of us together is the first step in continuing this dialogue and conversation as a community, Affinity Bar community. And also what I've recognized is I believe every Affinity Bar has kind of addressed that they do an annual gala or one really big event, particularly to promote scholarships for the youth that are coming up behind us. And so one idea is that if we have one big event for our organization, perhaps our Affinity Bar colleagues can promote that on their sites. Advertisement's really big. And at this time, I think this is a special opportunity to try to help one another get as much donation to our youth as possible. So that would be my last words of just trying to make sure that we continue working together to do as much as we can to promote progress and get our youth to a place where we can keep giving them as much funding as possible to make that change.
Thank you, April. I agree with all of that. Jeff, can you give us some of your final thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I will somewhat echo everyone. I think just bringing people together is super important. I was thinking about before my time with bailiff, back when Prop 8 was on the ballot in California, I know bailiff reached out to a lot of bar associations for support on that, didn't get much support. And I think that in part reflects the fact that bailiff was also not supporting other organizations at that point. And as a result, kind of learned a lesson that we need to be more proactive about reaching out and partnering with other organizations to show that we see their issues as our issues. Because if we want to ask the same, we need to be partnering with other organizations. And I think we've come a huge way since then. Speaking for bailiff and speaking for, I think, our interactions with other organizations. So I think that's all huge. I mean, I think there's still definitely room to improve. And I think especially thinking about things like, I know bailiff does a lot of work on judicial nominations, and that's something where we could partner with the statewide organization for sure. And with, we wrote a letter to Governor Newsom when the opening on the Supreme Court came up, urging him to appoint a person of color or an LGBTQ plus person. And that would have been a great opportunity, a missed opportunity to partner on a letter like that with other minority bar associations, because we very deliberately said, we all benefit if there's a minority, whether it's an LGBTQ plus person or not. And so we didn't limit it to only an LGBTQ plus person, but that would have been an opportunity we missed to partner with somebody like CLA or with some of the other folks on this call.
No, that's a really good point. We definitely are stronger together. And thankfully, the governor appointed a person who's both a person of color and LGBTQ. So we got a 2-for-1 in that deal. Tamara, can you give us your final thoughts?
Sure. Well, I think that CLA, thank you so much for doing a really comprehensive job. I mean, you've already invited lawyers of color to nominate our lawyers for the Trial Lawyers Hall of Fame, to collaborate on programs, to get active in various committees and publications. And I would say if you could summarize that in a quick sheet that we could all just quickly disseminate with quick links to everything that we could disseminate to our organizations, that would be fabulous. So just quickly, in terms of the nature of these times, I know that making a statement is something that we're all either working on or have done, but you find yourself getting statement exhausted. Yes, words matter, but in terms of returning to our roots as lawyers, as advocates, as people who empower our community, as people who advocate for certain legislation, I think we should identify our commonalities and get to work on that. Right now, we have on the issue of criminal justice reform, the George Floyd Policing and Justice Act, which is going to face heat in the Senate. Can we build coalition around that? And there are many other types of legislation, you know, the Dreamers Act, for example, and, you know, dealing with immigrants and the path to citizenship in America. I think we need to be very specific with how we can support each other through legislation, through policy, and get to work in terms of community and coalition building. We see that happen naturally.
No, I agree with you 100%. I do. Adrieannette, I was going to give you a quick, I know we have a hard stop because some folks have another meeting at 7, but did you have any final thoughts?
I'm just really happy that we are doing this evening. And again, CLA, myself stand in solidarity with the Asian American Pacific Islander community. I put the link in the chat to our statement, but to your point, Tamara, we are statement tired, and so action is required. And it's great that we've been able to have this dialogue and keep this conversation going, but it is also time to get some tangible action items done that aren't just programs that look like policy and real tangible change. And so I'm very excited and happy to work with everyone on increasing equity and diversity and inclusion.
Thank you so much, Adrieannette. I know we have a hard stop at 7, so I don't want to keep folks longer than that. I want to thank all of you for accepting the invitation to be part of this. This program will be recorded and made available to all of you and your organizations and on the CLA website. Let's continue to work together. Have a nice evening, everybody, and thanks again. We really appreciate it.
Thanks.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Good night.